Hello, everyone, and welcome into crushthestreet.com. I am Kenneth Amaduri, and I'm joined today with the founder and CEO of Blue Lagoon Resources. This is a company trading under ticker symbol BLLG on the CSE and BLAGF on the US side. Rana Vig. Rana has had a highly successful 30-year-long career launching businesses in the resource sector and cannabis sector. And we're going to be discussing today Blue Lagoon Resources and where we are in the precious metals. And it is my view that we are in an early stage moment in the resource sector. So this interview I consider very timely. So Rana, thanks so much for coming on Crush the Street with me today.
Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure.
Rana, 2020 has been a year equal to a Hollywood scripted film, if you will. Nothing short of that, to say the least, from societal volatility, market volatility, what we're seeing in gold, I mean, the virus, lockdowns, everything. I mean, in light of everything we've seen, what do you attribute gold's upward move in price towards?
Well, look, I think you said it best there. I mean, it's a completely unprecedented time. Never, when in the world could we remember, certainly not in our lifetimes, right? When you've got this complete chaos, not only in the financial sector, but in the with riots and with and then with demonstrations, and now with this, of course, with this virus. Those are environments that gold loves, right? And that's exactly what we're seeing here right now.
So, Reina, it's interesting what we're seeing right now. The Fed is committed to higher inflation. 2% is now not enough, according to Jerome Powell. What do you believe the implications of this are going to have on gold and silver at that?
Well, yeah, again, I mean, it's an environment that gold loves. It can only get better from there. And 2% is laughable anyways. I mean, come on, look, nobody really believes any of these numbers anyways. I mean, the newsflash of the day is governments lie, okay? And they've been lying to us forever. And, it's crazy. Look, I remember, when I was growing up, my dad's a retired civil engineer, right? He used to make about $45,000 a year. And you know what, the house that we bought at the time was about $45,000. Well, you know what the engineer today makes is roughly about $85,000. But guess what the home costs today? Over $1 million, that same home. So, I mean, I don't know where they get all these inflation, as you know, over the years, they've rejigged. They've taken almost anything of that's important to us that we use every day out of the inflationary numbers, anyways, right? So governments they're constantly lying. They're constantly giving us false information, trying to make us feel good. But here's the problem: when you go out. When you go to buy a coffee, right, and you're at Starbucks and it costs you $7, and you're like, "Wow, really, for a coffee?" Or you go to a movie theater, and by the time you do your popcorn and your drinks, you're at like $80. I mean, So what's happening is the money just isn't going far enough, right? As we know, right, and it's not holding its value. So what is that going to mean for gold? It's going to keep going up.
Absolutely. Yeah, the interesting thing about inflation, it's like boiling a frog analogy. People don't realize it's happening until, they're boiled. It's completely taken them over. And so my question is here, do you believe conventionally there will be a shift in gold ownership in Americans in light of what is changing with inflation and how things will be going forward?
Yeah, well, I think it's an interesting question. North Americans are funny that way, right? They haven't really understood yet still that the value of gold, you're and the importance of gold for preservation of wealth. You look at other cultures, take India, for example, right? I mean, India, in any village, right? We talk about ounces in India, the poor, they talk about in grams right? I mean, that's how important it is. If they can't afford it, the whole village will pool together in order to make sure that they have some gold, as a community, because that's the importance of it. And I think as North Americans start to understand that, especially with recently Warren Buffett jumping into the markets, for years and years, right? He hated gold, and suddenly I think he's recognizing what's happening with the Fed, and he's saying, "Holy smokes!" Right? And he jumped into gold, which I think took everybody by a little bit by surprise. So what's that going to do as mainstream media starts talking about it, as major institutions now are following his lead? That's going to raise the awareness of the importance of gold and preservation of wealth. And I think that's what's going to happen, hopefully, with the mainstream audience. They're going to start to understand that, we got to get into gold if we have any chance of preserving, the buying power, the purchasing power of our money.
Well, you mentioned India there, and maybe you could explain that a little further. What is India's affinity towards gold? Is it a monetary thing, or is it a jewelry thing, or is it a combination of both? Maybe that might give us some deeper insights as to what might be coming to America as the reality starts to set in terms of what's going on with inflation.
Well, it's a combination of both, right? I mean, it's a cultural thing for sure, right? For generations and generations, the Indians have recognized that it's very important to preserve, wealth, right? So one of the things that's customary is, when there's a wedding. Right, it's very, very customary for the girl's family to give gold to their daughter, and it was in the form of jewelry, and one of the main reasons for doing that is to make sure that if times get tough, right, she had that jewelry to be able to convert that into money. Right, so it's a very, very it's embedded in that culture, for thousands of years, right? And they recognize that very, very early. And I think that and it's, by the way, it's we're not talking about 10 carat, right? We're in North America are used to this 10, 14 carat business in jewelry, right? We're talking about pure gold. That's because it's not so much a function and that's an example actually of why it's not the fact that it's so important to have jewelry. It's important to have real gold, right, as close as possible to in the form of jewelry, to be able to use that if times get tough.
So, Rana, silver hasn't disappointed at all in 2020. I think a lot of people were leaving it for dead, watching that gold-silver ratio continue to expand. But July was an epic month for silver, but we're still materially much lower than we were in 2011. Can you share some of your thoughts as it pertains to silver?
Well, I think silver is going to do incredible. Right now, silver is being outbought like 30-1. Right. And what's very, very interesting is if you look at the latest filings, all major institutions, big investors have to file what's called a 13F in a quarterly filing. And if you look at the latest ones that were filed, I mean, you've got some serious players coming in, Morgan Stanley, UBS, Wells Fargo, Barclays, Bank of America, BlackRock. And I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. And what's fascinating is these are first-time buyers, first time that these institutions and these investors are coming into silver. So again, that's going to tighten up the supply, and silver has only one way to go, and that's up.
In India, what's silver's role? Is it similar to gold, or is it a little bit different in terms of the country's affinity towards it?
Yeah, I mean, look, silver is known as the poor man's gold, right? So it's that same mentality. I mean, if gold is the number one preference, but where gold can't be, for whatever reason, for economic reasons, they can't get it. They get into silver. The bottom line is precious metals, right? They know it. They've known it for generations. You've got to have precious metals in order to preserve wealth.
Rana, I think a lot of the mainstream conventional Wall Street players might think that we've seen the top in gold in certain ways. I mean, not everybody, but I mean, we've seen a massive move in the price of gold, all-time highs. What is your sentiment in terms of, the move we've seen, and any upwards projections in terms of potential upside for gold?
Yeah, look, I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I'll tell you, a lot of very, very bright people and people who have access to an incredible amount of data that they can crunch are talking about it. People, organizations like Bank of America, who's recently just revised their projections to be to say $3,000 gold next year. And you know what? I don't see it as a big surprise. And here's why. Look, we are in an environment of low or zero interest rates, right? We've been there for a long time, and we're going to be there for a very long time. And you know why? Because we're addicted. We're addicted. And what does an addict do, right? An addict needs more and more, right? And what is the Fed doing? They're giving us more and more because they don't want to stop the party, right? They don't want to stop the music. So you know what? I think that we're going to be in this environment for a very long time. I mean, look what's happening around the world, right? We're talking about India. Just 6 weeks ago, India was at 1 million new cases of coronavirus. 6 weeks later, they had 4 million. I mean, this is happening all around the world, and we're in for a rough ride for the next little while. And what are the governments going to do, right? The UK just revising their plan, all the furlough employees that they had. They've been paying them. Germany just extended their, I just read the other day, for the next 2 years. So my point is that the governments have to keep on printing money. They have to keep feeding the addiction. And it's going to keep, the more money they print, the more that is a great environment for gold, because that's what it likes. So where can gold go? I don't know if it's ever going to get to, 5,000 or 10,000, what have you. But you know what, for companies like ours, anything above $2,000, or even close to where it's at right now, is extremely profitable. And the beauty is, if you look at historically, for a small percentage of movement in the gold price, it's a huge movement generally in the markets.
So let's go right there. As an investor, my goal is to be early and in front of trends. What do you make of the moves we're starting to see in the resource sector as they reflect the gold price?
Well, you know what? I think it's just starting. I mean, if you look at historically, you take a look at, when gold had its last run and made a new high, and you take a look at the companies, if gold moved 10%, the companies moved 100%, right? I mean, that's the nature of the markets, right? People want to get in, and, sometimes, it's leveraged, right? So people are excited about it. And if they can't, get in for $2,000 for an ounce, but they buy $2,000 with some companies' stock, they look for that huge upside. So I think that as the media starts talking about this more and more, as the Fed continues to print money, and gold is on the top of mind every day, companies like ours and junior miners are going to do extremely well, because that's what's always happened historically, and I can't see any reason why it would change now.
Rana, let's go there. Let's talk about Blue Lagoon Resources. Can you tell us your story and how you founded the company, and kind of what led you to where we are now?
Sure. So, last couple, you mentioned earlier in the beginning, I have done a number of things. My last 2 deals were in the cannabis space, because that space was extremely hot. And I was very, very fortunate. In 2018, I took 2 companies public, a company called Curaleaf, which was the largest cannabis raise in Canadian history at $520 million. It was a $6 billion RTO, and also a company called Harvest Health and Rec, which was a $2 billion RTO and a $300 million raise. After having done that, I was reading a lot about gold and mining. I like mining. 10 years ago when I got involved in the capital markets, that's where I started. And but unfortunately, when I got started, the markets pretty much collapsed, right? Mining hasn't done well for the last 10 or 11 years. So I wanted to come back to mining, and I was particularly what I was reading about macroeconomics, and what I was reading about what was happening with gold and everything that we've been talking about so far. I thought, what, gold's got to be where it's at. So I decided to launch a company that's focused on gold last year, which is this company we're talking about, Blue Lagoon Resources. It started trading last July. And, I just got to work. I believe in really, really focusing. I just got to work on finding the projects. and we landed an incredible project. Only had it for about 5 or 6 months, called Dome Mountain. It's up in northern British Columbia, a beautiful property, which is just a short 50-minute drive from a local town that's known as Smithers. It's a mining town, 15, 20,000 people. And you know, it's great because you can drive right to the property year round, no helicopters, no camps, which are very, very expensive. And, miners can go and drillers can go work there all day, come home, have dinner and kiss their kids goodnight. I mean, it's kind of rare in our business, right? A lot of these properties, especially here in British Columbia, are remote. So yeah, we took control of this company and are very excited about not only getting the mine back into production, because we have it is permitted, and we just need to do 3 or 4 things to get that back into production. But we also have these very, very high grade veins, so a lot of exploration potential, because 90% of the property has not been explored at all. So we've got the best of both worlds: a near-term opportunity to create cash flow and a huge amount of a potential upside by exploring all that area that has never been explored.
Yeah, that is really exciting. Tell us, if you would, a little more about the resource and, kind of what the opportunity is right now with Blue Lagoon.
Well, I mean, really the opportunity are 2 things, right? I mean, currently, we've got about 250,000 ounces in what's called a measured and indicated, as well as inferred. And the opportunity, and we have, by the way, and we have 1 million ounces of silver. My team keeps reminding me, hey, you got to talk about silver, because silver, most people in our industry, had dismissed silver, and suddenly at the prices that it's at, it becomes a very important factor, because essentially it's free, and we can talk about that in a minute. But basically, we have this mine that it needs 3 key amendments to get it back into production. They're not onerous. It's a 5 or 6 month timeline, and we've started on that process right now. And we hope to be in a position to be back to the government to say, hey, look, we've checked off everything that you wanted us to check off, and so we can get permission to commence the operation. And then we've got these incredible high grade veins. What makes a company? Why would someone invest in a company like ours, right? Well, you look at a couple of things, right? Where is the company now? Is it a good value? And where can it be? Well, how what's the future? Well, the future is, we know we've got a permit. We know we can in the next short time, hopefully, get this thing back into production. But that's where we are now. But once you start exploring on these high grade veins and you can expand that resource, right? That's where the upside becomes. So we have a long ways to go in our opinion.
So 4 to 1, right? You have 4 ounces of silver for every ounce of gold. Talk to us a little bit about what you were meaning by the free silver when it comes to the production side of things.
Sure. So, typically, what happens is, you look at your cost of production, right? So, we've done the analysis, and, you look at all the numbers, and your numbers are based on, typically, hey, here's how much it's going to cost us to produce an ounce of gold, right? And as I mentioned earlier, many people in our industry, kind of dismiss the silver because, where there's gold, there's obviously other elements there as well, right? And so we have about, for every gram of gold, we've got, 4 grams of silver. So all our numbers are based on there. So when we truck it off to the mill, right, it's not like they're not going to say, well, hey, this is how much it's going to cost you for the gold, and this is how much it's going to cost you for the silver, right? I mean, this is our cost basically. So all the silver essentially is free. So, with these numbers, and, and some of the thought leaders have been talking about $50 plus silver. So it starts to get extremely exciting when you start to look at, even at the level where it's at now. What it means is, if nothing else, all of our expenses, all of our G&A is all going to be covered by the silver. So it's super exciting.
So Rana, one of the things that I like to do is give people an idea of the best way possible, what to expect. How to anticipate, how to prepare our minds for the market before we start to see things transpire. And I'll start this question like this. If we see Bank of America's $3,000 target come true, let's just say, what does the resource sector start to look like? For instance, will companies start to get more aggressive with their production, with their exploration? What starts to happen in this industry?
Well, that's exactly right. You're right. I mean, look, for years and years, and certainly in the 10, 11 years I've been in the capital markets, I mean, there was nothing happening in mining because, gold was, sitting around 12, $1,300, right? When we started talking to for this acquisition, right? Gold was hovering at around 1450, right? Just not exciting enough for investors to come into the market to fund these companies to go, find more. But at 1900, at 2000, and beyond, I mean, the interest becomes tremendous because the profitability ultimately, remember, you're right, it's about generating the profit, right? So the profitability becomes huge. So that's why there's such an interest right now in all these exploration companies. I mean, they are so busy, right? We're having difficulty already now finding, more geologists and more of the drillers. I mean, thankfully, we had locked many of the contractors we needed, right, in anticipation of this run. So I don't think I'm so smart. I think we're just lucky, right? So we just planned it well, and we got everything kind of lined up. But that's what happens, right? When gold starts to move, silver starts to move like this, the whole market is on fire. Hey, that's what happened in the cannabis industry. If you followed it or any of your audience followed it, that's exactly what happened, right? The valuations were crazy. I mean, we'd wake up in the morning and we'd look at our portfolio and boom, jump again, high. Next morning, again, boom. It's like, holy smokes, what's going on? Well, it becomes a frenzy, right? And that's what reality is. And if you go back and look at when gold had last run, and you look at the stocks, the junior company stocks, that's exactly what happened, right? The trajectory was just this.
Absolutely. And I know you said lucky, and I know you're trying to be humble, but there's something to be said about someone who strikes while the iron is hot, puts himself out there and acts. So I appreciate that about entrepreneurs and what you're doing. So in closing, Rana, if you would share some closing thoughts, some general closing thoughts. And of course, if investors want to reach out and learn more about the company, where can they go and what can they expect to find?
Sure. So look, the bottom line is that there are a lot of great companies, so, if people at this time, if they've wanted to invest in junior exploration companies and ride that upside potential, then there's never been a better time than this. Whether it's our company or other companies, similar to ours. I mean, this is an incredible time to, do your homework, take a look at companies like ours, that have great stories where you have the ability, where we have the ability to be in near term an operator, as well as have this incredible opportunity for exploration to grow that mine, right? So that's number one. Number two, I'm a very, very active CEO. I like to talk to my shareholders. I think it's a very, very sacred responsibility. So I'm always accessible, right? If people go to our website, www.bluelagoonresources.com, they'll find a link there for an email. They can email me. Eventually, it'll come around to me. I'm happy to engage in any discussions and give any information that's required to make an informed decision.
I appreciate that. Rana Vig, everyone. Rana, thanks so much for coming on the show with me today.
My pleasure. Thank you.